welcome to the SVG TV news for Friday, March 10th. I am Khalil Kato with the details. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is hosting the 3rd Caribbean Business Cruise Seminar and Prospecting Mission. According to Invest SVG, the event is an opportunity for businessmen and women who wish to build, develop, and enrich the Caribbean of tomorrow to be major players in the Caribbean business community, meeting to enjoy on a ship, professional networking of high quality, allowing to meet and exchange with businesses and startup leaders and economic authorities from different scopes including Guadeloupe, Martinique, and St. Martin. Invest SVG said it is also an exceptional social platform for strategic networking and roundtables on topical agendas, business and economic prospects, and a real opportunity to strengthen the commercial, cultural, and business links, meet economic actors and professional associations. At the opening ceremony today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs conference room, Chairman of Invest SVG and Executive Director of the SVG Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Anthony Regisford, said he is happy to see the gathering of various stakeholders after weeks of discussions in preparation for the event.
I think this visit is about trade. It's about networking. You are a group of business people from Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Martin, I'm told. And what is significant is that you are from islands very similar to where you are now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Early trade has been a feature of how we existed. Pre-Columbus, the Taino people, the original inhabitants, they traded among themselves, perhaps more easily than we do today, because there weren't all these conditions, no passports, very few trade barriers. So we've become more sophisticated.
Donc, est devenu plus sophistiqué.
But we've created barriers.
Mais on a créé des barrières.
And I think this initiative is about dismantling those barriers. I look around the room and everybody looks as if they could be from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're one people. So what we have to learn to do properly is to get our economies working by first trading among ourselves.
Regisford told the visiting delegates that it is his hope that at the end of their mission to SVG, a relationship can be formed between the business sector of Guadeloupe, Martinique, St. Martin, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
I believe we have similar economies in terms of structure. By that I mean what comprises the business sector is a lot of micro and small businesses. So when we think of trading, we've got to think scale. We've got to think not way up in the clouds. Yes, we want to trade globally as well, but I think personally the real opportunities, especially when you think about scale, lies right here in the region. I really hope that you, by visiting here, would make links that would enhance your business. That is, being able to exchange, trade with businesses here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Acting Executive Director of Invest SVG, Nadine Agard-Julerat, said it is her hope that the regional delegates can create strategic linkages with locals whom they come in contact with during their time in SVG.
You drive around on your tour or your walk through our very quaint town, that you recognize opportunities on niche markets for investment. We got our international airport in 2017, so we were a little behind a lot of our neighbors, you included. But that means that there are more niche markets available for filling. So I hope that you guys take the opportunity to recognize all of these areas and that you come to Invest SVG to help us facilitate. So I will also be brief and tell you we look forward to great things happening between all of our respective countries.
In her address at the ceremony, Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Affairs, Kiesel Peters, welcomed the visiting delegates and commended the Caribbean Business Cruise Tour and business cruisers for selecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a destination for making important linkages.
Your presence here today is gratifying, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines is indeed the Caribbean you are looking for. I am further encouraged by the determination of you, our neighbors, to encourage trade among us by utilizing this unique method of engagement. Indeed, the Francophone Caribbean and their geographic proximity to us as our neighbors augurs well for providing practical solutions to regional trade logistics. Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Martin, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are so diverse and yet so similar in many ways. Comparable tastes, but various ways of presentation. This suggests that there is room to explore each other's products and services within our region, and that they will be well received. While there may be subtle differences between us, these barriers are not insurmountable.
Minister Peters also told the visiting delegates that the local private sector, through the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, works closely with various entities of government, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Invest SVG, and the Center for Enterprise Development. She said the unspoken pact between these organizations is a great enabler for increasing opportunities for the growth of SVG's economy through trade.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, my responsibility is not merely to represent St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My responsibility is to represent its people, our hopes, our fears, our vulnerabilities, and most importantly, our quest to build a modern, competitive, many-sided, post-colonial economy. The last 3 years have been particularly difficult for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, my country. Tensions had to dig deep in the midst of prolonged dislocations of COVID, the consequences of the volcanic eruptions, the challenges of climate change, the multiple problems and contradictions in the global economy, the added impact of tensions between Russia and Ukraine, further price increases on a range of commodities such as fuel, fertilizer, food, drink, building materials, and transportation, scarcities of certain products, increased cost of infrastructure, rising interest rates, etc. And then there is the existential knock-on threat of global insecurity. These are truly challenging times, demanding unity and seriousness among our people. At these times, we need always to display strong leadership with clear policies of merit and not grandstanding and posture.
The Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Minister said the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the vulnerabilities of various islands, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and as a region, everyone must work together to face exogenous shocks.
In an effort to build our resilience, this administration has over the last 22 years implemented robust policies which are in keeping with our national economic and social development plan for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The plan outlines the country's long and medium-term strategies for national development and offers a vision for improving the quality of life of Vincentians. The goals of the said plan are as follows: re-engineering economic growth, enabling increased human and social development, promoting good governance and increasing the effectiveness of public administration, improving physical infrastructure, preserving the environment and building resilience to climate change, and building national pride, identity, and culture. Many of our policies have been geared towards stimulating growth and development in key sectors, namely education, agriculture and fisheries, tourism, health, and importantly, enterprise development, especially among our young men and women.
Minister Peters says it is her hope that the business cruise concept will be expanded to include other countries in the region next year. Concern has been expressed about an increase in rodents at various schools across the country, which the Vector Control Unit is taking steps to reduce or eliminate. This is according to Senior Environmental Health Officer Dr. Todd Lewis, who was speaking on the API's Manning SVG program today.
In schools, because we are always aware and ready to assess and assist the schools then, because we know that where we as adults we have a typical understanding or a general understanding of what the situation is and how to go about that. The children on the other spectrum of things, I don't want to say they are desensitized to the situation, but they are not fully aware as, for example, what a rodent burrow may look like, or what the drop-ins of these rats may look like. So we now have to be that gap to bridge the situation with us, the teachers at the school and the students, to get the information to them as across to them as very simple as possible. Things that they can look for, things that they can do. So since the turn of the year, we have had several schools in which we had to go in, we had to do assessments.
You're talking about 2023?
Yes, 2023. In some instances, in one instance, I should say, we had to close the school for a while, make sure that a lot of sanitization took place after we finished doing all our rodenticides and all our bait and so on. We had to stay there. The unit itself had to stay there overnight to make sure, because when we do our surveillance, we can't do it in the daytime. We have to basically mimic the movements of the rodent, so to speak. So we went in, we did all of that, we got the space up to standard where we can say, okay, now it's your turn, the cleaners can go in, sanitize, XYZ, we do another post-assessment, and then we can say, okay, the space is ready for work once more. So we have to fully understand, because we know kids, they play a lot, they're quite curious. So they may see something there and they're not sure what it is, and they may come in contact with that easily. And knowing that these schools, like you say, the kids are quite active, so it's easy for this to move around. They can pick it up, another kid may touch it, these kind of things. So we have to be very, very vigilant of all of this situation that takes place within our schools.
Dr. Lewis said the Public Health Vector Control Unit has been doing its part to keep the environment clean. However, every individual has a role to play in this effort.
It stems back to the same thing. We have to understand that, like us, the rodents need three simple basic things. They need shelter, they need food, they need water. And in a lot of our spaces, we provide that for them. I would just use just walking anywhere generally in Kingston, for example. We may look at our drains, we have food scraps. We have, you see, water here, there, and everywhere. And the drain in itself provides a shelter because of the temperature, everything for the rodent. So we have that same situation in a lot of our institutions here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. So it's mainly a situation where we have to continually push sensitization. We have to recognize that it cannot be business as usual. It has to be, it's not, like I say, the Vector Control Unit, public health is here, but we have to understand and recognize the limitations, that it's only X amount of people, that we now have to share that particular responsibility. It's not only from a public health perspective, from an insect vector control perspective, but we have to get all different stakeholders involved, the teachers, the public servants, everyone across the board, because one's health affects not only you, but everyone around you. And that's the message we usually push from the Ministry of Health, where your health is everyone's responsibility. So we look at that aspect. We take into consideration, how are we prepared to serve the general public? What information we have there, and how are we going to put it by bring it across as simple as possible for them to understand all the measures that need to be taken, and don't see it as additional work, but something that is there for them to improve their immediate surrounding, to improve their health, which is the ultimate goal.
The Public Health Vector Control Unit can be contacted by telephone number 456-1991 or at its office at New Montrose. The RSVG police force has issued a wanted persons bulletin for Jeff I. Lorraine, a 31-year-old of Park Hill, Sandy Bay, and Barreley, who is wanted in connection with a series of offenses, including burglary. Police say if seen, do not approach, and contact the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of crimes at phone number 457-1211, the officer in charge of the Criminal Investigations Department and Major Crimes Unit at 456-1810, or the officer in charge of the Eastern Division at 458-6229, or any police station or police officer you're comfortable speaking with. The police say all calls will be treated confidentially. And former journalist Junior Jarvis was today sentenced to life in prison for the murder of former banker Randy Lawrence, who was reportedly shot 6 times at Arnesvale on February 14, 2017. The sentence was handed down at the High Court today by Justice Brian Cottle. In 2022, a jury found Jarvis guilty of 6 charges, including murder and attempted murder. In handing down the sentence today, Justice Cottle said after serving 30 years, Jarvis could be brought back before the court to assess whether he is sufficiently rehabilitated to be released. Minister of Tourism and Culture Carlos James said the resilience shown by the people of the region and the challenges that we have overcome have clearly established several propositions for reparation for the enslaved and the indigenous people, including those from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. James, who was addressing the opening of the 10th International Garifuna Conference yesterday, said while the conference is a starting point, other steps have to be taken to continue the dialogue to ensure reparations remains at the forefront of the political agenda in the global context.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, through our Prime Minister, Dr. John Ralphie Gonsalves, and I understand he will address the conference later this week, has been one of the leading political figures at the United Nations, championing the call for reparatory justice. Here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we continue to do our part by declaring this month of March a National Heroes Month, Heritage and Heroes Month. We have a calendar of activities. We've placed at the very forefront His Excellency Joseph Chatouet as our first national hero. You saw the many students who performed here and the exchanges, the cultural exchanges, transfer of knowledge, focused on the arts, the dance, the music, the language, our lost language. We've placed significant emphasis on ensuring that we place within the context of our schools elements of our Garifuna traditions. We've started, and I note here with us Dr. Denny, we've empaneled a number of local historians and academics. I see Dr. Lewis here as well, who has begun the process of compiling a series of information that will be put into a context for the production of a transcript in which we will call the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, told by our people, doing our research, in our language.
Minister James also told those at the conference that reparatory justice is not just about financial compensation for rewriting a wrong.
It captures several different things. And borrowing from the 10-point plan from CARICOM, I mentioned the public health crisis in which we face globally from our peoples. Cultural institutions where we've lost a significant part of our culture. A developmental program for indigenous peoples. And importantly, a full formal apology for the many atrocities caused to the enslaved and our indigenous peoples. I hope that we can use this conference, this 10th conference, to build on all of the hard work over the many years, to develop a comprehensive plan that has a firm and compelling legal and sound argument in which we can move even further our call for reparative justice. The hard work that we do now, some of us will not live to experience the outcome of the hard work that we're putting in now. But we do it for the children, yes, the future of Europe, the ones who are coming behind us. We tell our story, we make the call for reparations, and we set the platform for our future generations to benefit from this undertaking.
Also addressing the opening ceremony was Minister of Education Curtis King, who said since the establishment of the CARICOM's Reparations Commission, significant progress has been made in terms of the promotion of reparatory justice for the enslaved, but much more work needs to be done.
It is discussed and debated in international fora, in the capitals of the former colonial nations in Europe. It is discussed in Africa, and of course, in several international organizations, including the United Nations. Some institutions in Europe have been offering apologies. Some have even gone so far as to pledge reparation payments. There's therefore little doubt that the reparation movement has been re-energized since the establishment and launch of the Caribbean Reparations Commission. But we must not become complacent. There is still a significant number of our people who demonstrate a lack of interest and, in some cases, outright opposition to the campaign for reparations. Despite letters sent by our governments to several European governments inviting them to commence dialogue on reparations, they have thus far refused, and I would say bluntly refused, to engage our leaders in such dialogue. The fact is, it is fair to conclude that these and other persistent challenges still confront the reparations movement today. But in the midst of these challenges, there exist opportunities that can be exploited and used for advancing the cause.
Meanwhile, earlier today, a Garifuna delegation arrived in the state as part of the Garifuna Homecoming 2023, organized by the SVG Consulate in New York. The delegation will be attending the remaining activities of the International Garifuna Conference and other activities leading up to National Heroes Day on March 14th. At the Argyle International Airport, SVG's Consul General in New York, Rondi McIntosh, welcomed the delegation home to Euromay.
Today, our ancestors must be smiling to know that we may forgive, but we will never forget. I want to repeat that. We may forgive, but we will never forget. The story of the Garinago people is an incredible one. To see the generations that succeeded those 2,000 plus persons or people who were taken to Rodent, and today we stand proudly to say to our colonial masters that we were not defeated. We are here today. We are here stronger than we were taken to Rodent. When I got a call in December from Dr. Gill, and I'm really sorry that he is not here, but when I got a call and he spoke about the intended pilgrimage, I said, okay. And then he mentioned a gentleman by the name of Trevor Palacio. And I said, get me Trevor's number. And I started speaking with Trevor. That conversation on that day sold to me that I, as Consul General, the government and people of this country must embrace more than ever our Garifuna people. The mission or the vision of having the rites of passage that every year a Garifuna child at the age of 13 must make that pilgrimage to Ureme. I was immediately sold on that idea. It was late in the game. It was just December. But we are here today to say that with hard work, persistent planning, or careful planning, and sticking to the task, building your network and reaching out, we can all accomplish anything.
The Garifuna delegation is expected to journey to Baliso for a religious ceremony on Sunday. The pilgrimage, which is anticipated to draw more than 70 individuals, is being coordinated by the Ministry of Culture. And the annual literary fair hosted by the UWI Open Campus and the Vincentian Association of Artists, Writers and Producers Incorporated continued today with a book and visual art exhibition held throughout the morning. And at this time, a number of performances, including drumming, dancing and poetry, are taking place at the Open Campus Lecture Hall. Tomorrow, the Children's Village of the Literary Fair will feature poetry reading from students of the Dubois Government School and the Caliqua Anglican Primary, among others. They will also play traditional games and listen to short stories. The Literary Fair will come to an end on Saturday evening with the screening of 3 local films by young Vincentians. They are Grassmen by Aiko Rodent, Sugarlands by Ackley Olton, and Our True Story by Alpha Studios. The screening will take place at 6 p.m. at the Open Campus. The University of the West Indies Open Campus and the Vincentian Association of Artists, Writers and Producers Incorporated extend an invitation to the public to these activities. On the issue of bridging the age gap with digital technology in SVG and the region, CEO of the Banks Holdings Limited, Shafia London, said fear and awareness are issues some persons are struggling with as it relates to new technology. On the VC3 Roundtable Talk on Wednesday, London was joined by Nelsia Robinson Hazel, chair of the Committee for the Development of Women, and software engineer Janika John, discussing the issues surrounding the theme for International Women's Day 2023, Digital Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality.
You're talking mainly here about age gap. Yes, there is perhaps a wider gap, even more so between the genders than what exists in terms of age. But Ms. Robinson is absolutely correct. It's really 2 things. One is the awareness and training, and 2, I strongly suspect is also fair. I say fair because if you are accustomed to doing something a certain way, as technology evolves, it could become quite intimidating to adapt to the new technology. Some people are braver than others and they launch out and they try it. Others will remain quite conservative. I mean, there are people, for example, who tell you they're not going to read the news online. They're going to stick to their newspaper, and that's it. So it's all about awareness and overcoming that fear. Once we can find a way to get more women to learn the process of what it entails to use technology, then we could maximize their usage. And it's a slow process, but it's one that it needs to have dedicated attention. So if there's going to be a class we tend to just have a class and all age groups could mix, but perhaps different age groups need different attention. There might be embarrassing moments that they would feel like they're moving slower, but it's not that you're slow, it's just you're not accustomed to it. My 4-year-old can do things on a phone and on a TV that I don't know how he does it. He can't even read, but he somehow knows how to turn the buttons and put things where they're supposed to be. So it's almost as if you're born with it these days. So it's all about building the awareness, training persons, and helping them to overcome the fear.
London stated that there is a need to promote females in the ICT field, noting that through adequate training, women can venture into a career in IT or the STEM field.
To having access, we also need to find ways of promoting women and girls in the ICT sector by developing their skills in areas such as coding, where we all know that girls and women are critically underrepresented. So again, together with government, businesses, and various other partners, how do we need to provide training to women to bring them into the IT sector so that they can enhance their skills, and now we will have more female role models who in turn can pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the STEM field basically. What is really interesting is a lot of research is showing that by 2050 thereabouts, 75% of jobs will be related to STEM. And most of these are going to be crucially connected to technology. So there needs to be a concerted effort by the government, academia, civil society, and crucially the private sector to develop the skills of women and girls in the ICT sector so that they are not left behind.
According to London, it is essential that women be included in the decision-making of digital technology, noting that while technology has its advantages, it also has its disadvantages.
Women need to be involved in the decision-making around digital technology. So whatever changes a country, a government, a business is making, the perspective of women need to be considered. We need to ensure that today's emerging data-driven solutions consider the perspective of women. Online content technology needs to be developed not just by men, for men, but with women and for women, so that as a people, we can respond to the specific needs and priorities, especially within a regulatory framework, because we know technology, whilst it has its good side, it also has a number of ills, and we need to be able to protect the rights of women and girls in that technological space against things like cyber harassment, cyber violence. We need to make sure that women's specific needs and priorities are tackled as we develop technology in the various spaces.